Next morning at the detective's apartment in the bedroom. Sleep. Glorious, glorious sleep. Plop. I wiggle my nose and brush something chill from my cheek, refusing to waken from my wonderfully warm and comfortable doze. Plop. The noise is once again followed by a peck of coldness against my skin. I groan, shoving my face into my pillow and letting it warm up my cheek. This time, the spot of icy cold bites at my shoulder, and I'm forced awake as my body shivers. Blinking my eyes open gradually, I swipe my hand over the patch of chill, frowning when my hand comes away wet. I try to examine my fingers, but the room is too gloomy to see much of anything, especially in my half-asleep state, so I haul myself out of bed and yank back the curtains. A blast of morning light greets me. I shy away from it before adjusting to the brightness and holding my hand up. My fingers are wet, but the liquid is clear. Slowly, I bring it to my nose to find it has a slightly floral scent to it. Rose, if I had to guess. The plopping noise sounds again behind me, so I turn to find the source. That's when my ceiling caves in. I wonder for a minute if I'm still asleep as the ceiling cracks and explodes in a shower of plaster and stone, but the milky bath water which sloshes around my ankles proves otherwise. A cloud of damp plaster erupts in the room, and I choke and cough as it coats my throat, swiping my hands at the air to remove the fog of dust obscuring my view. As I blink through the grey haze, Mr. Yu from the apartment above stares at me in shocked silence. His amazingly intact bathtub sits where my bed used to be. He clutches his now plaster-covered loofah in a white-knuckled grip. He at least seems uninjured from the fall. The same can't be said of my bed, shattered planks of it creating a spiky barricade around the bathtub. The rest of my bedroom hasn't fared much better. Everything is either drowned in rose-scented bubbly water or destroyed beyond recognition from the impact. My heart twinges in my chest at the debris. I rub at my eyes. Great. Later that morning in Farah's bedroom at the warehouse. Farah lays sprawled on her bed, holding her phone up in front of her face with a pout settling on her lips. Is it too early? She ponders as she stares at the early time glaring at her from her phone's screen. Maybe they're already up. Or maybe they'd like a good morning text to wake up to if they're not. When do most humans even get up? She rolls onto her front with a sigh. She doesn't want to ruin anything by being too eager, but how can she feel so much and not tell the one person who has inspired those feelings? A grin brightens her confusion as her partner's face dances across her mind. My partner. The grin spreads so wide it almost hurts her cheeks. Once again, she rolls onto her back in delight, so distracted by Jules that she nearly topples right off the bed. With a decision made, Farah begins typing in a morning message, a pleasurable tingle spreading through her body. That is until the sputtering chug of a car engine sounds from outside. What the? She bounces off of the bed, flinging her phone onto the soft duvet and flashes towards the window. A gleam of metallic silver sparkles through the trees, a familiar sight. Farah is out of the door and down the stairs before the engine has even stopped. Jules always enters through the crumbling heap of the warehouse's disguised front, so Farah heads there straight away. Footsteps sound from the other side of the door, and Farah pauses when they're not as familiar as expected. Instead, it's a sort of squelching sound. With a brow arched, Farah flings open the door to find Jules on the other side in nothing but completely soaked pajamas and a dusting of clammy wet plaster that creates a grey gooey film over their skin. And they still manage to steal Farah's breath away. At the door to the warehouse. My hand hovers in midair. I'm about to knock when Farah yanks open the door. We both stare at each other across the space of the doorway. It takes a moment for her to process my bedraggled state. She drags her gaze over me and then pats her fingers against her mouth. I've got to be honest, babe. She pulls her hand away and rolls her lips together. The only reason I'm not exploding with laughter right now is because we're dating. I adopt a smile before gesturing down at myself. And here I thought you'd appreciate my new look. My soaked pajamas cling to my limbs, so I pinch at the fabric to tug it away. It sucks back into place with a sloping sound as soon as I let go. She finally lets out a laugh, though it's softer than expected. Well, I can hardly complain about getting to see you all wet. Pretty sure I've had this exact scenario play in my head at least 10 times since meeting you. A flare of heat rushes about my body at the statement, but I push it down and give a smile. Really now? She tugs at her clip-on hoop earring while dropping her gaze. Well, maybe not this exact scenario, but whatever. She reaches out to wrap her arm around mine, tugging me inside. So, what happened with all of this? She waves a hand over my damp condition. I draw to a stop by the stairs, forcing my fingers through my wet hair and shaking off the flakes of plaster that stick to my hand after I do. My upstairs neighbor's bathroom kind of exploded into my bedroom. Panic flashes in Faraz's gaze as she instantly looks over me for wounds. I'm fine, we're both fine, but my bedroom isn't. Which is why you're here, she says with a nod. Which is why I'm here, I confirm. I need somewhere to stay until everything is fixed. She bounces eagerly. Ah, that's brilliant. You'll have to remind me to thank your neighbor. I shake my head, though a smile still manages to catch my lips. At least someone is enthusiastic about what happened. Until then, she sidles a step closer, tracing a fingertip with care up the arch of my throat to catch a stray droplet of water. I shiver at the motion. You better go shower. Uh-huh, I mumble. My pulse speeds up considerably, even at the slight touch. We'll be in the kitchen when you're done. It's breakfast time. She springs away and practically skips down the hall. I turn to head to my room, the promise of a hot shower and dry clothes too much of a temptation to ignore. In my bedroom at the warehouse. It's lucky I left a change of clothing here last time I stayed. I tug my t-shirt on and enjoy the dryness of the fresh outfit against my skin. The soft fabric feeling particularly luxurious after the disgusting task of peeling off my plaster-covered pajamas. I did manage to bring a case of my own stuff with me, mostly things that were untouched in the safety of the living room, and I set about sorting them. Placing my few belongings about the bedroom is like a final step in making this place really mine. I turn back to my case, 2 mountain-sized bundles of flyers tucked in one side of it. Of course those survived the carnage. I try to relax my jaw from its clenched state. Leaning forwards, I grab up the flyers in my arms and make to head out of the room. They almost topple out of my grasp as I practically bang into someone outside of my door. Oh, hi, I splutter in surprise, nodding at Nat, who stands close to me in the narrow confines of the hallway. She smiles. I was just coming to find you. Breakfast is nearly ready. We head off down the hallway together. You're making breakfast? I ask with a slight frown. I didn't think all of you even ate breakfast. We don't usually, at least not like you do, but we want to accommodate you during your stay, she replies. Farah told us what happened. Alright, we'll go with that. I offer a nod. Thank you for making the effort. Of course, Nat says with a smile. Anything we can do to make you feel more comfortable. We round the corner of the hallway leading into the foyer. Nat's gaze quickly dropping to the nearly dried puddle of water I left when I entered. She just about manages to hold back the sadness on her face at the way the polished wood is slightly stained. It will be odd staying here for so long, I say to distract her. She asks, glancing over at me as we continue on. I stretch my arms out in front of me, easing some of the stiffness the stress of the morning brought. Well, I don't want to feel like I'm invading your team's space. But you are part of this team, Jules. You can't invade a space that you are welcome in. A gentle comfort washes over me, easing out the cricks and cramps that were biting at my sore muscles. Thanks, Nat. I really don't think you understand the impact you've had on us, she continues, pausing in the corridor and touching my arm to draw me to a stop too. You've lived a very long time alone, just us away from the world. You're the only one who's been able to break us out of that strange kind of hibernation. With you, we have a renewed sense of purpose, of being. That's quite the statement, and it takes a moment to wrap my head around it. Well, we'll go with that. I give a simple nod after processing the words and the kind meaning behind them. I appreciate the sentiment, Nat. It's more than merely sentiment, Detective. It's true, she replies with a broad smile. I look over at her, able to feel the truth through her tone. We begin making our way down the hallway once again. This corridor, with its warm colors and decor, is much more familiar, and I know it leads towards the kitchen. Nat draws in a small breath before continuing. Her hands are in her pockets as she walks, a small knot of seriousness on her brow. For so long, all we've had to think about are our jobs. We would move from one mission to the next, not thinking much on anything but what our next task would be. She glances to me with a weak smile. Of course we were together, and that was important. but it wasn't stable, I offered, sensing the emotion from her but a strained expression tugging at her features. She sighs. It's strange. You get so used to something being normal, especially after centuries of living it. A flicker of amusement shines in her eyes, lightening her heavy thoughts. We never stopped to consider if moving around so much was really what we needed. And now, having a home, it means we're settled. We're living again. The smile returns to her face. And for an immortal, that's quite the feat. I give a soft nod of understanding. You've helped give that back to us, she continues, and I can never thank you enough for that. What can I say to that? I don't think I've ever had someone admit to valuing me so much, not even in my job. It's a strange but not at all unwelcome thing. As we come to the door of the kitchen, she pauses again to look at me. But I especially appreciate the impact you've had on me. On you? Our burgeoning friendship has given me new perspective, as well as a new person to talk to. She places a warm hand on my shoulder. I truly value how close we are becoming. Hmm. 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 You know what, sure. I wasn't sure what it would be like when I joined this team. I admit, meeting her eye as I continue. Finding a friend like you has certainly been a surprise. She shifts, chuckling. The best kind of surprise, obviously. I add with a smile of my own. With all of the surprises you've had since finding out about this world, I'm glad to know I can at least be a good one for you. A true warmth flows through the words that seem to tie the edges of a bond between us even further. I push open the door to the kitchen and gesture inside. I guess we better get going. She nods and heads in as I follow after. Inside the kitchen. Breakfast hasn't even been laid, but already a taste of herby freshness settles on my tongue, probably from the abundance of herbs which line a few windowsills around the kitchen. The pops of fuzzy greenery spill from ceramic pots, a couple of lavender plants adding sprigs of purple color to the emerald mess. Bra, who is busy gathering up a large tray to one side of the open sunlit room, turns to face us as we enter. Finally, I thought you two weren't going to bother to turn up. She turns back to her task. Are you going to help us out or what? Nat offers me a final smile before heading off behind a marble-topped island. She takes up the task of chopping berries, which she'd obviously been in the middle of before meeting me. I suppose I'm staying here for free while my repairs take place, so it only seems fair I help get breakfast ready. I place down my stack of flyers on a nearby sideboard and turn to the others. After asking for help, Farah moves away into the next room with determination set on her face, so I figure she doesn't need any aid with whatever she's up to. I glance to the others. A pile of plump berries sits in a bowl beside Nat, so I could help with prepping those easily enough. Ava is, to my utter surprise, clearing the table of files and papers, apparently looking to set it ready for the breakfast ahead. And then, of course, Morgan has secluded herself in the most shadowed corner of the room, keeping out of the way of everyone diligently doing their own tasks. We'll help Ava. I move past the marble-topped island with its fancy bowl of fruit and its kitchen utensils, half of which I don't recognize at all, and head towards the table. Ava is stacking folders on top of each other before moving them to the sideboard. You don't need to clear the table on my account, I say, especially if I'm the only one actually having breakfast. You're part of this team, so of course I will do as such, she states, continuing to drag folders from the top of the rustic wooden table and set them aside. But I also do it for Nat. She likes the sense of normality. Want some help then? I offer. She pauses to look at me across the table before giving a sharp nod. If you wish. The accoutrements are over there. I don't know what that word means. She gestures to the nearby counter where a tablecloth and cutlery are piled. Jesus. I turn to grab the cloth, surprised to feel the rich weight of the daisy-white fabric in my hand. The lace edging bordering it is delicate and soft. My grip on its edges is gentler than normal as I begin to shake it out. You and Nat have been friends a long time, I'm guessing? I continue as I throw the cloth over the length of the table. Ava catches the other end and helps tuck the tablecloth into place, gently brushing out the air from beneath it so it lies flat. It has been centuries. I yanked the tablecloth a little harder than intended, the idea of working in centuries rather than decades for someone's lifetime still so odd. So you're pretty close by now then? That's friendship, and the friendship of all those on this team makes me who I am. Her gaze mists over for a moment, and she glares at the table without really looking at it, her jaw setting tight. I never had companions such as these in my life. Not even when you were human? I ask, bringing the cutlery to the table. She takes a couple of spoons and sets them in front of the seats arranged around the large table. I never had much chance. My father was a lord in England after the Battle of Hastings. I roll my lips together to stop from making a comment at that. My family and I engaged in many social events, but we never truly got to know the people around us. Her eyes soften as she lays out a napkin. But I was very close to my family. She shakes her head, clearing her throat. Now I have this team who are as close to me as they were. I think it's the first time I've heard her describe the rest of Unit Bravo that way. It's nice to know she can feel emotions and isn't just a statue of duty. Hmm. Hmm. Sure. I pause in my task to grin at her. Are you going soft, commanding Agent Dumota? I tease before giving a wink. Don't worry, I won't say anything. Her shoulders droop as she stares at me. I shrug. What? It's nice to see this side of you, but you didn't expect me not to tease a little, did you? No, I don't suppose I should have expected anything else, she replies, a heavy sigh on the words. Yet a smile still tugs at the corner of her lips. You can always tease me about my emotional vulnerabilities if you want, I offer, placing down a plate and shifting it into line with the ones Ava has already set. She looks at me, an inspecting eye traveling over my features before she turns back to her chores. There are too many targets to pick from. My mouth falls open before a laugh follows. Oh well, that I really wasn't expecting. She smiles at me with a warmth in her eyes. I can hold my own in battles of wit, detective. I've never heard you bother with anyone else before, though. She purses her lips for a moment. I do not see the need to with strangers, only amongst those whom I care to spend time with. A sense of belonging flows through me, like an injection of happiness throughout my body. I drop my gaze back onto the table as I finish setting it, the two of us working in a comfortable quiet from then on. Breakfast is ready, Nat calls as she makes her way towards us. She places down a tray in front of where I'm pulling a seat out and smiles. It's served for you too. A spread of berries, yogurt, granola, toast, and sliced fruits make my stomach twist with sudden eager hunger. Thank you, I reply, barely able to take my eyes off the food as I drop into my seat. You're most welcome. And breakfast is ready for us as well. Farah chimes, practically skipping in from the other room with a tray balanced on one hand. She plops the tray down at the end of the table to avoid knocking the floral centerpiece, and I frown as I try to work out just what is on it. I have an immediate instinctual reaction when I realize it's pouches of blood. Um, yeah, it's just, I mean, they're vampires, like, sure. The sight doesn't stir much within me. They're vampires, they drink blood. It's hardly a surprise at this point. The only thing that does surprise me is the fact that the liquid is contained in silicone pouches rather than the blood bags I was expecting. I focus on my own breakfast with hungry anticipation. Farah's eyes light up as she pulls a couple of the pouches closer, unzipping the top of one to shove a metallic straw into the hole. You will pour that into a glass, Nat orders before quickly glancing at me with a wince and then back at the younger vampire. We show manners in this household. Farah stares at her before sighing. But I never put it into a glass before. We have a guest, Nat whispers. Farah glances at me with a brow raised before looking back to Nat. You don't mind, do you, babe? Glass, now. Nat orders, pushing a tall tumbler towards Farah with the tips of her long fingers. The younger vampire blows out a sharp breath before pouring the liquid into the glass, shaking the pouch up and down in impatience to get every drop out. Meanwhile, at the opposite end of the table, Morgan has ripped off the top of the sealed pouch with her sharp canines and is chugging the contents down without care. Nat's mouth falls open. Morgan, we need to return those to the agency. Morgan licks at her lips, lapping up the stains of red across her mouth and shrugs. I was hungry. Nat groans, putting her elbows on the table in order to rub her face into her palms. She looks at me over the tops of her fingers with an apologetic frown. I'm so sorry, Detective. This is not how we normally act. Morgan arches a brow and checks over each member of the team in turn. What are you talking about? This is exactly how we always act. The comment earns a glare from Nat. um. Hmm. Yeah, let's go with that. Please don't worry about it, I say with a smile to calm Nat. It seems to work some as her shoulders unknot from around her ears, though she keeps a narrowed stare on the way Morgan has begun licking out the pouch. You really don't need to stand on ceremony with me. Thank you, Detective, Nat says through a sigh. She fiddles with the pouch in front of her, a pouch which contains much less blood than the others seem to have. You're very generous to be so understanding of our needs. Standing, Morgan exclaims with her top lip curling up. It's there to understand. She nods at me. This can't come as a shock by now. Vampires, you get that? I didn't before, then I certainly do now, I say with a light laugh. They all smile at me, even Morgan, to my shock. I continue to enjoy my breakfast, but soon I'm interrupted mid-mouthful as Ava places down her now half-empty wineglass and stares at the door. If she's come to tell us we can't even enjoy our breakfast, I'm heading to my room right now. Frau mumbles as they now all glance towards the door expectantly. I'm wondering who she is when there's a sharp knock and my mother enters. She pauses mid-step as she stares over the scene in front of her. I apologize, I didn't realize. She hesitates when she notices me. I didn't realize you were eating. It's fine, Ava replies. Why don't you sit down and eat with us? Nat suggests with a smile, gesturing to a spare seat. Rebecca's focus slides to meet mine. I did say we should go with the flow to see where things lead, and now does seem an opportune time for that. Yeah, sure. I nod over towards the spare seat with a smile. You should join us. Relief softens her uncertain expression, and she steps closer to settle into the seat with a posture so formal it rivals Ava's. I push some of my breakfast in her direction. She picks up a fork, skewers a slice of pineapple, and bites into it with a sigh. Thank you. The rest of the breakfast passes rather uneventfully. Rebecca looks about as uncomfortable as expected, but she eases once she has the task of clearing away dishes. She never really was one for having a relaxing time. I help Ava clear up the napkins and tablecloth as the others busy themselves with the dishes and empty pouches, except Morgan, who has once again found a place to sink into the shadows to one side of the room. So, did you all do this family breakfast thing when your dad was around? Farah asks so casually that it takes a moment to process. Farah, Nat hisses, maybe you could be a little more careful in bringing up painful topics. Painful? Farah's nose wrinkles. Isn't remembering the people you love a good thing? Not for everyone, Ava replies sharply, not looking up from her task as she answers. I don't know, I say, hoping to break through the building unease. I was too young to remember. We did, Rebecca adds. I glance to her as she scrubs the dish in her hands with such force I worry she'll take off the glaze. Rook insisted on it, even though it meant he had to get up 2 hours earlier every morning to cook. She pauses, her shoulders shaking. Family meant everything to him. Nat lets out a breath and places a gentle hand on her arm. I'm sorry, Rebecca. She swipes a hand across her cheek. I'm not here for this. The dish falls from her grip back into the bowl with a quiet splosh. She rolls her shoulders back before marching over to the sideboard. I only came to deliver these. A couple of pieces of paper slap onto the wooden surface. What is it? Ava asks. Your new patrol rotas, she replies, already gripping her bag to throw over her shoulder. Look over them when you get the chance. She leaves without looking back. You okay? Farah mumbles as she appears at my side. I give a nod and return to my task. Farah heads toward the sideboard as the rest of us continue to clear up. At first she merely leafs through the rotas, that is, until her attention lands on another pile of papers. I'm handing a pile of folded napkins to Ava when Farah almost knocks the precariously piled flyers to the floor. What are these? She asks as she flounders to balance them back on the sideboard. Flyers for the blood drive, I reply. What are you going to do with them? She scans one quickly before turning to me with a grin. Hoping you could leave them here and forget about them? No. I have to try and hand them out to as many people as possible. I respond, putting away the cutlery into the drawer with a clatter. Farah shrugs. I mean, you could just leave them here if you wanted and say you did. Not like we're going to tell anyone. As tempting an idea as that might be, it wouldn't take much for Captain Sung to find out I hadn't done anything with them. Nat steps out from behind the island to look over a flyer. And even if it may make things awkward for us, a blood drive is a good cause. It's something that should be supported. Farah's eyes light up. We could support it. How? Ava asks slowly, her eyes narrowing on the suddenly enthusiastic younger vampire. Why don't we help you hand out these flyers? Farah offers to me. A long, reverberating groan sounds from Morgan's spot in the corner. Farah ignores it. We haven't got anything else to do, right? She glances at Ava. So we could help out. We do need to keep a close eye on the detective. Ava begins before Farah punches her in the arm. Exactly. She's already bundling up flies in her arms before I can say anything more. 2 hours later at the square. Do you know about the blood drive? Hey, did you know there's going to be a blood drive? Take a flyer. I watch from my flimsy plastic chair as Farah accosts anyone who passes us by, which is quite a few people considering we've set up in the middle of the square. The leafy branches of the hazel trees sway overhead, offering a good amount of dappled shade, and the grass is surprisingly squelchy beneath my shoes considering the heat of the day. We've done our best with the rickety stall provided to us, but the piece of thin fabric acting as an awning isn't enough to keep the pollen of the golden catkins from dusting all over the flowers. But at least having the team here has been much more helpful than expected, especially because most people have signed up just to get a chance to talk to one of them. Being around them so much, I half forget just how attractive they are. Maybe I've grown accustomed to their beauty after all these months. Well, maybe not for all of them. Everyone Farah tries to get the attention of turns to her and immediately falls powerless to her charming smile and sparkling eyes. I'm no exception. Even watching from this distance has my heart thundering a little harder. She turns back to us and waves her hands in the air. Another batch of flyers gone. I'm on a roll. You're the only one on a roll because you're the only one who's trying, Morgan grunts. Good of you to notice that you're doing absolutely nothing, Farah replies, shaking her head as she bounces towards me. She pecks my cheek gently. How are you doing, babe? uh, let's go. Let's go with that. I smile and lean closer to Farah. I'm certainly glad to see you're enjoying yourself. I think I might be the only one, she mumbles as she glances over the rest of Unit Bravo. I don't know. Nat seems to be having a good time. We both look over to where Nat has drawn in an eager crowd as big as the one Farah had. Farah grins. Well, that at least makes it two. She looks back to me. Are you not having a good time? I mean, enjoy, not so much, but I am glad not to be suffering through it alone. Well, if you're not having a good time, then we need to get this over with faster. She grabs up my stack of flyers and scurries towards her next helpless victim. Hey, do you know there's going to be a blood drive? I watch with a smile as Farah draws in person after person, flyers stuffed into their hands before they've even escaped the captivating sight of her attractive features. A surge of warm happiness overcomes me to know we're together, that I'm with someone who can bring me such joy from the simplest shared moments. An hour later. There was never anything like this in the Echo world, Farah comments, scanning over one of the flyers as the group of us sit near the stall. The crowds died down some time ago, so we haven't had much to do except sit together, talk, and wait for the crowd of parents picking their kids up from school. Nothing? I ask, leaning forwards in my seat and resting one arm on the stall. She glances up, placing down the flyer before nodding. Not that I can think of, but I didn't live around towns very often, and healers in that world are powerful enough to heal even blood loss, so they didn't really need this kind of thing. I was hoping we would get more people to sign up, Nat says, frowning down at her multiple full sign-up sheets. I scoff. This is way more than any other year. We probably would have gotten more if Ava hadn't glared them all away, Farah teases, wiggling off of where she was seated on the stall to poke at the commanding agent further. No. That's not true at all, I counter, moving to the edge of my seat to catch Ava's attention. I really appreciate your help today. She offers a slight smile along with a nod. Thank you, Detective. So this many people are just signing up to give away their blood? Morgan asks, staring down at the sign-up sheets. A smirk creeps over her lips. You think they'd mind if we had some while they're at it? Nat grimaces, standing up from her chair in order to gather the sheets up and tidy them away from Morgan's view. We have a supply from volunteers for the agency. We don't need any more. Morgan shrugs. It's only a suggestion. A prickle shivers down my spine as the group's banter fades, and they all turn to stare over my shoulder. What? I ask, shifting my shoulders up. Hello, Detective Langford. My shoulders sag a little at the honeyed voice. Bobby, I imagine? Yep. I swing around, finding Bobby smiling at me, though the expression doesn't reach her eyes. Her focus quickly shifts away from me to take in Unit Bravo behind me. Her smile tilts into a true smirk. So, these are the mysterious agents helping to protect our town? Her gaze slides back to mine. Well, aren't you going to introduce me, Detective? This is a meeting I've been doing my best to avoid, so I slide in front of Bobby's view to distract her. Um, hmm. Sure. There's no way I'm encouraging any kind of banter with Bobby. I don't need to add that drama to my day. Instead, I angle away from her and fold my arms, waiting silently for her to continue. It takes a moment, but she eventually concedes with a heavy breath and a roll of her eyes. I was shopping in one of the stores and came to say hello. Is that so bad? She spreads out her hands in front of her. I don't have the time for this, I reply, making to turn away. Bobby's attention sweeps over the group of vampires behind me. But maybe it would be better to catch you another time. It's always better when you're alone. She turns to leave, a strut to her steps that seems unwarranted. She keeps up the confident pace until she's disappeared down one of the side streets. Well, I'm glad she's gone, Farah mutters, pushing out of her seat to join me at my side. Come on, let's finish this up so we don't have to speak to any more reporters. Nat finishes. Morgan snorts a laugh. I don't think that's the word she was going to use. I smile at Farah and follow her to the stall to get back to what we were supposed to be doing. The afternoon passes surprisingly quickly after that. The parents walking to pick up their kids from school end up stopping by, and we get a whole horde of new sign-ups like we'd hoped. As I finalize the sheets ready for typing up tomorrow, I give a pleased smile at the reams of names listed. It's definitely a job well done. A job that wouldn't have been so well done without the help I had. I swivel around to examine the others, who all look as weary from the day as I do. Well, except Farah, who is dancing on the spot to a tune she's humming as she helps tidy up flyers. Standing up, I follow Farah's lead, helping to tidy pens and paper from the top of the stalls. After a few moments, I'm interrupted as Farah slides in between me and the stall. I chuckle as she gazes at me with wide eyes. Is there something I can help you with? She perches back against the stall and grins. I sure hope so. You see, I've gone hours without a kiss, and it's really drained me of energy. Oh, I understand, I say, angling closer. You need a refresh after a hard day's work? Exactly, she blurts out and then bites at her lower lip in a seriously distracting manner. You know, to help with my energy and all that. Hmm. Sure, let's go with that. There's not much of the day left that you need energy for. I begin watching a pout form on her lips, but maybe just a small boost. Dipping down, I press a peck of a kiss on her cheek. The pout breaks into an instant grin that makes her eyes glimmer. You certainly know how to rev me back up, babe. Revved up enough to help clear all this up? I ask with a chuckle. She rolls her eyes with a groan even as her smile remains. Fine, fine. I make to begin clearing again as Farah remains in place. The heat of the day has evaporated away, but the sun remains for a while longer. As Ava takes down the stall, I shove the boxes of flyers and sign-up papers into the back of my car. It's difficult to ignore the slight squeak it makes at the weight. I'm just shutting the trunk when my phone buzzes in my pocket. Hello? I answer, swinging my car keys in my hand as I lean against the back of the car. Jules, are you somewhere you can talk? My mother asks from the other end in a hurried voice. I push myself up as a bead of worry dribbles through me. Yes, why? There's been a disturbance and we need Unit Bravo to intercept, she continues. Intercept what? What disturbance? I ask, the flurry of questions drawing the others closer around me to listen to the conversation. There's a pause before Rebecca finally replies. A possible kidnapping in progress. I'll send you the location. I slam my thumb on the end call button. Unit Bravo and I are piled into the agency SUV before I even receive the GPS ping on where to go. In the forest not that far away. Ava swings the SUV around in the clearing, the tank-like car's suspension having dealt with the roots and cracked earth much more smoothly than my little hatchback. It's like sitting in the comfort of an armchair. Is this the place? She asks, peering through the windscreen to the empty grassy space in front of us. I double-check the GPS location Rebecca sent and give a nod. This is definitely it. We ease out of the car, tension skittering around the group and causing a silent air about us. We don't close the doors in order to minimize the noise. It's a surprisingly large clearing considering the thickness of the trees surrounding it. A sea of green carpets the area, with tangles of dark bushes creating a barricade around the outside. The sun's diminishing rays barely penetrate the wall of trees growing tall over the low foliage. Our steps are slowed by the lush, overgrown grass, but each step which breaks the blades sends a waft of summery goodness to help ease my nerves. A few large boulders have been nearly swallowed by the grass's swell. Did you feel that? Morgan whispers. Ava nods. Yes. What is it? I ask, feeling nothing but the remnants of warm summer air against my skin. There's magic here, Nat murmurs as she comes up beside me. She places a hand on my arm to catch my attention. Be careful. As we all tread through the waves of grass, we end up converging on a small area ringed by the same towering oak trees as the previous clearing. Ringed, the area is surprisingly open, and in the center sits a lone small stone box. I head closer, making out a few scrolling etched markings carved into the surface of it. My hand reaches out to grab it before Farah has a chance to mutter, Don't just pick it up. Thankfully, nothing explodes or erupts, so I turn to show the others. What is it? I ask, frowning as I turn the baseball-sized object around in my hands. My fingers have to hold it tight, the weight of it surprisingly dense for such a small object. It begins to hum, a few of the markings thrumming with a gentle white glow. I flinch as Morgan smacks the box out of my hands with a growl. Shit, she barks. I freeze as panic seizes my limbs. What? It's a lure box. It's used by trappers to draw supernaturals in. Nat explains, but I can hear the worried strain tugging at her voice. And it did its goddamn job. Morgan snaps, hunching over and flashing her gaze about the clearing. I swing around as I stare at the vampires, all of them following Morgan's lead and dropping into defensive positions. You're telling me this is... Yep. Farah nods, her focus not shifting from the surrounding trees. It's definitely a trap. Next chapter.